Welcome back to the channel for part 5 of my depiction of what I believe may have happened had Ben Solo never turned to the dark side. For those of you who haven't seen the first 4 installments and would like to, they are all linked in the description below. So, in the last video, we experienced our first major time jump in order to cover some ground, and I'm going to kick this one off in a similar fashion. So we'll begin this chapter with Rey now around 20 years old, which, according to canon, makes Ben roughly 29 or 30. This is right around the age that our characters were in The Rise of Skywalker, but they are exponentially more powerful in this scenario due to the difference in their training and the time at which Rey was discovered. This chapter of the story begins on the planet of Lothal. After their run-in with the bounty hunters, Luke decided it was best to relocate. In his studies, he learned more about the world between worlds. The texts revealed that there were 3 entrances on Ahch-To, Lothal, and Exegol. And for reasons he had not yet shared, he wanted to stay close to this place. It was nighttime and everyone but Luke was asleep. The time to face Palpatine was quickly approaching and he needed to consult some old friends before that day came. Yoda and Kenobi would speak with their old Padawan for quite a while about the dangers that lied ahead, explaining that the Emperor had grown far more powerful than ever before, and that many powerful allies had rallied to his support. Yoda reminded Luke about the most important rule of the Sith.
Always 2 there are. No more, no less.
Obi-Wan then jumped in, saying, "You have exceeded all of our expectations, Luke. Even I believed your apprentice was doomed, but you saved him. You have created a new order, built on ideals that we failed to acknowledge. But beware, my old Padawan. This dyad you have discovered will be needed if you are to win. It is powerful, enough to throw Sidious off balance, but it could be made to serve him. The dark side is in her blood, as it is in all of yours. The Emperor thrives on manipulation. He will do everything in his power to turn his blood against yours. Trust your students. Let them know you believe in them, and that you stand with them till the end. They believe in you, Luke. We all believe in you." The very next day, Rey and Ben set out early in the morning before the sun came up. The two have grown very close now and frequently spend entire days exploring together. Ben's view of their relationship has transformed from him seeing himself as a mentor and a protector to now considering them to be a partnership. He would still be there for Rey if she needed him, of course, but he recognized her maturity and knew she was fully capable of handling herself. Rey appreciated Ben's confidence in her. That emptiness she had felt throughout her childhood, that had stuck with her even after meeting Ben Solo, was growing smaller and smaller. The closer they became, the more complete she felt, but something was still missing. That darkness within, she thought to herself. It was holding them back from becoming what they were meant to be. A true dyad. By the time the sun hit its peak, they reached their destination. Rey didn't know where they were supposed to be, as Ben hadn't yet revealed it to her. They stood before a wall with a large painting of 3 mysterious people. Just like the one from the books, Ben whispered. The father, the son, and the daughter. Rey asked him where they were and why they had come. Ben hesitated for a moment, remembering his promise to keep this place a secret. He pushed the thought aside. The answers to all your questions are on the other side of that door. We'll open it together and find what we came for. There's something inside me. A feeling. It's always been there. For a long time I learned to control it, but it's growing again now, and I need to know what it is and how to stop it. Rey was confused. Ben was strong. He always knew what he wanted. Or so she thought. Did he share the same inner turmoil she had been fighting? He interrupted her thoughts. Rey, you're not alone. Rey's eyes widened as she realized he had been in her head. The dyad was funny that way. It wasn't intentional. Sometimes it just happened, and one would find themselves inside the other's thoughts. Rey nodded as she spoke gently. We'll do it together. They entered the portal in search of answers, but what they found would not help their cause. Ben came across a portal that showed Snoke lingering behind his mother. She was younger than Ben ever remembered and clearly pregnant, with him of course. Snoke had been manipulating his future from the very beginning. The image shifted to Leia in a different stage of her life, appearing very similar to her present self. He watched from a distance as she spoke to Han. Our son is gone. He always wanted to be like you. We should have let him chase that dream. In his confusion, Ben glanced at Rey, who had collapsed to her knees in shock. She had just witnessed the murder of her parents under the command of her grandfather. He killed his own blood without hesitation. Palpatine turned to Rey, just as he had in her nightmare on Ahch-To. I grow tired of waiting, granddaughter. You will come to me now, or Lothal will be destroyed. Just like that, he had found her again. Ben grabbed Rey's hand as they sprinted back to the exit. The portal they had come in through was closing as the Emperor unleashed that horrible laugh. They barely slipped through it as it closed. They raced back to their masters, somehow sprinting the entire time, completely unfazed by the fatigue that would have slowed even the loath wolves that inhabited this planet. The group left without any debate. Luke and Leia knew the time was coming, and the urgency in Rey's voice was enough to convince them to do just about anything she asked. Ben shamefully faced his uncle and explained how his mistakes revealed their location to the Emperor. Luke wasn't happy, but he wasn't surprised either. Plus, there were far more pressing matters now. They discussed what their next move should be, but they all knew what they had to do. The time had finally come. Were they ready? It was impossible to know until they faced him. Leia interjected. Palpatine could be anywhere. How do we know where to look? Ben looked at Rey. He had no idea, but she knew, and he could feel it. She didn't have a name, just coordinates. She plugged them into the ship and set course. Leia looked at the destination. You've got to be kidding me. Coruscant? Why would he ever go to Coruscant? What's wrong with Coruscant? Luke asked. Han's on Coruscant, and you know when he finds out we're there, there's no way he's leaving. Ben didn't say anything, but he was quietly happy his father was there. They had stopped briefly to meet with him before they first went to Ahch-To, but that was the last they'd seen of each other, a full decade ago, and they hadn't spent any quality time together since he was 10 years old. Everyone's nerves began to grow as they approached the planet. There was a noticeable tension in the air, but for some reason, Ben wasn't worried. He couldn't wait to see his father, to hear Han's stories about how he had talked his way out of impossible situations, to sit down in the cockpit of the Falcon, and to be wrapped in Chewbacca's mountain of hair as he hugged him. They arrived on Coruscant and landed outside of Anakin and Padme's home. After all these years, nobody had moved in. Luke and Ben had been here a long time ago on their quest to find Snoke. Leia could still feel her mother's presence, just as she remembered it in her dreams. It was as if she had just been there. She told everyone to stay put while she went to find Han. Ben questioned her. Don't you want someone to come with you? Should any of us be going out alone with the Emperor here? She calmed her son. Palpatine knows we're here, Ben. He has no reason to seek us out. We will go to him tomorrow. Until then, get some rest. Ben awakened early the next morning, ready to finally greet his dad. But he was surprised to find only Luke and Leia standing out on the balcony. The good news, Leia would inform him, she found Han and Chewie. The bad news? Sidious was holding them hostage. Ben had always understood why the Sith needed to be destroyed, but now he had new motivations. Sidious held no fear for any Jedi, but he may have made a mistake here. Ben Solo was on a mission now. This was personal. The group approached the Jedi Temple, which was heavily guarded by Sith troopers and dark warriors who fought with an arsenal of deadly weaponry. They were trained killers, challenged by no one and feared by all. The troops fired upon the Jedi from all around, but they deflected the onslaught as they pushed forward toward the warriors. When they got close, Ben broke from the group and sprinted into battle. The other three took out snipers who fired upon him from the rooftops, ripping some of them to the ground with the Force, but the firing didn't stop. They couldn't go after him. They needed to stay together right now. Ben made it to the front of the temple and out of the crosshairs of most of the troopers. He's going to get himself killed, Luke thought. He knew all too well how dangerous those soldiers were. What he didn't know is that hidden within their lines were Inquisitors, Jedi hunters who fought with sabers and were well trained in the dark side of the Force. Ben took them all on with absolutely no plan. Too much of his father's heart in him, Luke thought to himself as he recalled their duel with Snoke. As his enemies advanced on Ben's position, he pointed his purple saber in front of him as he called on the Force to guide him. He weaved in and out, dodging attacks, throwing opponents backwards with the Force, making his way through an impossible amount of fighters. As the Sith troopers' numbers began to wane, Rey caught a glimpse of Ben as he fought. She couldn't help herself. He was beautiful to watch. The way he moved, it was so effortless, so instinctive. They hadn't seen much action against real enemies in their training, but Ben defended himself while taking them down like it was second nature. A perfect blend of offense and defense that none of them, not even the Inquisitors, had ever seen before. Ben was surrounded. He lowered his saber and honed in on the Force once again, drawing even closer to the dark side than he was before. The Jedi killers charged him. He ran directly at one of them, and just before her saber pierced his chest, he flipped over her while grabbing her from behind and pushing his saber through her back. He ripped his weapon back out and barely blocked a collective attack from the remaining two. They fought hard, and as the fight waged on, Ben recognized that these two were stronger than the rest. More skilled than anything he had faced before outside of Snoke and Palpatine. They continued to fight, and then suddenly, Ben was grazed in the stomach by a saber, and then stabbed in the arm. He drew even further into the dark side. He lunged backward and then reached out with the force, raising them into the air. There was no escape. He was furious now. They were choking, struggling to breathe. He stepped in close and demanded an answer. Where is Han Solo? The stronger of the two replied, "You don't want to know." He considered the words for a moment and then pressed harder, closing off her airways completely. Leia shouted her son's name, ordering him to stop. Luke now stood directly behind Ben. That's enough. Ben came to his senses as he released them both. Only one was still breathing. "I'm sorry," Ben managed to say as he stumbled backward. His heart was racing so fast he could feel it pounding in his head. He knew what he'd done. He didn't need anyone to tell him. For the first time in years, he'd lost complete control. And as much as Luke wanted to lecture him, he recognized that they didn't have time. But there was a conversation he needed to have before they faced Palpatine. He secured the surviving Inquisitor and placed her on a speeder that would take her to the nearest prison. Luke sat on a ledge outside of the temple doors. "Ben, Rey, I want you guys to understand something before we do this. Leia and we've passed on all we know. We have placed the Jedi Order in your hands. What you guys decide to do with that responsibility will be up to you. But I want you to know that we believe in you. Do not underestimate the powers of the Emperor. He is stronger than anything you have ever known. Stronger than me, stronger than Leia, even stronger than your bond itself. But I know that together, we can win this fight. Trust your instincts. Trust the Force. Trust each other and remember to seek balance in everything you do. And you will come out of this thing alive. Now let's go find Han." I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up to support the channel, subscribe for future Star Wars content, and may the Force be with you always.